When Chris Bowen addressed the COP27 conference in Egypt in November, he had two main messages. The first was that after a decade of ambivalence under a Conservative government, Australia under Labor was back on the climate change gravy train, and that for the foreseeable future, Bowen and his colleagues would be frequent guests in the train's first-class dining carriage, wherever in the world it took them. His other message was to poorer countries that can't afford to live it up so lavishly on the climate change express. Never mind, he said, Australia will flick you a lazy $900 million to help you develop, quote, resilience in dealing with the climate emergency. Unfortunately, that money was restricted to our Pacific Island neighbours, because one of the countries that attended COP27 could really use that money right now. When South African President Cyril Ramaphosa was granted a few minutes at the lectern at COP27, he said Africa was already experiencing the worsening effects of climate change. And to keep the world from overheating, loads of money needed to be shoveled his way.
This then places a great deal of responsibility on developed economies to honour their commitments to those countries with the greatest need and countries that confront the greatest environmental, social and economic effects of climate change. The commitments that were made must be honoured.
Well, never mind the environmental, social and economic effects of climate change, Cyril, old son. It's the social and economic effects of corruption and crime that are now driving South Africa to the point of collapse. Ramaphosa must now be sitting in his office in Cape Town and wondering if he'd played the wrong hand. Would the leaders of the world's richest countries have reached for their wallets a little quicker if he'd told them that his state-owned energy company, Eskom, had for years, under the strain of incompetent management and ageing infrastructure, been steadily increasing rolling blackouts, and a complete collapse of the economy was now a distinct possibility? Probably not. As we've seen many times over the past decade or two, the developed world is only interested in helping poorer countries if doing so also assuages the guilt they feel about having bigger homes and cars. You want us to help you prevent blackouts caused by crime and corruption? How is an Australian minister going to sell that to the swinging voters in a teal electorate? The situation in South Africa now is dangerously precarious. The number of blackouts in the first 9 months of last year was 4 times the total for all of 2019. There is even talk of civil war erupting, and embassies have told their staff to stock up on essential supplies. South Africa's transport network is in even more trouble. Exports of coal and iron ore have been reduced because Transnet, which runs the railways and ports, can't cope. Earnings from exports were reduced by billions of dollars. Which brings me back to Bowen. Australia's energy supply might not be crippled by crime and corruption, but we soon will be crippled by something equally pernicious: net zero targets. It doesn't matter whether you destroy an energy system by corruption or by political idiocy. It's still destroyed. And that is where Bowen is taking us with his net zero targets and mind-blowingly expensive renewable energy infrastructure. Mind you, he's not alone. In less than 2 weeks, about 5.5 million people will vote in the New South Wales election. There are some minor differences between the incumbent coalition and Labor, who are clear favourites with the bookies to nab the reins of power. But even these differences are meaningless, because both parties are committed to net zero emissions by 2050. In other words, whoever wins this state election will be committed to destroying the state's economy because, according to the logic of climate change, that is the only way to ensure our children and grandchildren enjoy the same prosperity we do. Like Australia, South Africa is rich in natural resources. It should be a thriving, peaceful, free country. It's not, because the political system is based on cronyism and corruption. Net zero and renewable energy might seem benign by comparison, but the end result, spiralling blackouts, industrial instability, economic contraction and social unrest, will be just the same.